With the Chargers' salary cap situation is going to be as important as ever for them to hit on their draft picks, and there are three positions they must address with their first three picks.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 7 seasons, but this is our 5th season as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys so much for making this your first listen today. To make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and also follow the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcasts from. And David, we have a big Chargers mailbag we want to get into today, including our first look at what the Chargers need to get in the draft. With the free agency, budget being pretty low right now, they're going to have to do a lot of their big moving and big improvements in the draft. That's going to have to be where they get it from during this offseason as we see it right now. So we're going to talk about the three positions we're looking for them to target early, and then also get into some of the free agents that they have impending, unrestricted guys. Who would you pick if you had to pick from, Trey Pipkins or Drew Tranquil? There's some really, really tough, decisions for the Chargers coming up here. I mean, Morgan Fox, you could also throw in there as well. And we'll also talk about two players that fans love that might not be able to be retained, and a couple of players that maybe will be retained that maybe fans aren't as excited about. And then also get into if Justin Herbert has the eye of the tiger, like Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes and some of these other Tigers out there. But today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? And this is the game that's definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDON, all caps, in the game. Let's start off our Twitter mailbag, or Chargers mailbag, with some voicemails as well from Chris Saiz, who always puts in some questions. Thanks for the question, Chris. And he's asking, with the first three draft picks, if you had to choose, what positions are you taking? So this is tough, David. I mean, if you look at the Chargers roster, there's a couple different places that you would definitely look at earlier on in the draft, you think, where they have the bigger needs. But when you're looking at it, knowing, those top three picks are really at a premium where you get your best chances of adding impact players to a team who wants to contend next year, where are you going?
Well, I mean, I think when you're looking at this question, you have to also take into account what needs might pop up depending on what happens in free agency as well. So I think
Sure.
I have a couple of those positions that are kind of on my, fourth or fifth spot. But if you're making me pick, I think the first three that I really feel like the Chargers need to address or need to add in the draft would be edge. You always need guys that can get after the quarterback. And with the unfortunate, Joey Bosa injury issues that he has really been plaguing him his entire career, we've seen how incredibly important it is to have somebody be able to get after the quarterback. Even when you have a premium edge rusher on the other side and Khalil Mack, you just can't get the most out of that guy if you don't have somebody else that is as imposing, at least as a pass rusher, on the other side. So edge is one of them. Tight end, I think, is another one that I think the Chargers can really find some explosiveness, find somebody that can really be a partner with Justin Herbert and kind of grow in the league together. Justin's still a very young quarterback, and I'm still going to be pounding the table for this one until they make it happen, and that's a speed wide receiver, baby. You got to have it. I'm tired of them missing on this just really obvious, blatantly obvious situation here. They need to get somebody in here that has blazing speed. It just feels like you are doing a disservice to Justin Herbert if you're not getting him the speed that he needs. And two other ones, just dark horses real quick, safety and linebacker, I think, are two other positions that may change on the priority list depending on what happens in free agency.
Yeah, I think those are good calls. I think as far as what changes with free agency, I mean, I don't think they're bringing Nazir Adderley back, so I don't know if that, changes it, because really it has a lot to do with JT Woods. I think, Alohi Gilman obviously stepped up this year, so are they willing to roll it back with him and JT Woods? That's interesting. If Drue Tranquil walks, I mean, you're going to have a big hole there, right? And I mean, even as we see the linebacker core right now, it still feels a little bit incomplete, even with him and Kenneth Murray. So that's a good call too. If you're looking at the top three, I think a lot of it has to do with what the draft has as well. Like this is a draft that a
Always.
lot of people are saying, hey, maybe not the best wide receiver draft. And maybe that means that you don't take a wide receiver in round 1, or maybe it just means that you get to pick 21 and you get your pick of the litter. Maybe none of them are legit top 10 type of picks, but you get to kind of pick your flavor, what you're looking for out of the guys who are available. I think either a game changing, getting more explosive at tight end or wide receiver, I think they have to do in their 3 picks, in the first 3 picks. Like if you get an explosive wide receiver and you want to wait to get a tight end, I understand it. You can run it back with Gerald Everett one more year. If you want to get an explosive tight end that's going to help your explosiveness that way, and you want to wait a couple rounds and just find someone who can stretch the field a little bit, but maybe isn't as high of a prospect as someone like a Jalen Hyatt or something like that, I think could get behind that. But I think it has to be one of those two with the first 3 picks. You have to get more explosive playmakers for Justin Herbert, as other teams with young quarterbacks have done. I like edge rusher as well. That is somewhere where you're also hearing it is a deep class for edge rushers. You should be able to get someone in. You need a plan for after Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack as well, right? Those are 2 big contracts, and the Chargers really have no leverage with those situations right now because they don't have any backups to them. There's no heir apparent in the building. Chris Rump probably isn't that guy, right? Through a couple of seasons now. And you have to groom for the future, and also you're still helping yourself in the right now because you always need pass rush. The chances both of those guys make it through 17 games is not high. You need it. And then I will say corner. Corner is one for me, David, where I think there's a lot of uncertainty there because, first of all, you don't know what J.C. Jackson is going to look like when he comes back. And you already have so much money invested in the cornerback position with Michael Davis and J.C. Jackson having 2 of your biggest contracts on the team.
Yeah.
Michael Davis's future with this team isn't even locked up at this point. He is one of the easiest guys to release from a cap situation. He is one of the easiest places where they can find cap space and not a lot of dead cap. So as good as he played, it's not a guarantee that he's back with the Chargers in 2023. That makes your, cornerback situation feel even murkier. And also Bryce Callahan, he played a huge role for you in 2022. He might have, kind of taken himself out of the race as far as
priced
guys.
himself out, right?
Might have priced himself out. Exactly. Yeah. So that is an underrated need for me, going along with your linebacker, and safety needs for sure. But another question that we had about the draft was this. It was, if you are in the first round, would you take a tight end or would you end up taking a running back? And that's funny because, tight end's huge. You have Michael Mayer, guys like that. You have Dalton Kincaid. You have Darnell Washington. There's a ton of really, really interesting prospects. I think Dan Brugler has 5 tight end prospects in his top 50, which is a lot. Yeah, you should be able to come away with a playmaker from that position. But the running back is really only one guy. It's Bijan Robinson. And I think, David, that has a lot more to do with just philosophy. Are you willing to take a running back in the first round?
Nope. No, I am not. I'm sorry. Just the percentage of running backs that get selected in the first round that actually pan out and have a successful career, and quantifying success for a running back, because their longevity in the league is so short just compared to most other positions, because they take a pounding. They get hit all the time. So I just don't believe in spending a premium first round pick on a running back, no matter what kind of collegiate career they are coming off of. I can't see it. And so for that reason, I would have to go tight end for sure.
Yeah, and that was from Bolts 1955 on Twitter, just to get a shout out for that question there. It'd be tempting. Bijan Robinson is probably, the most special running back in this class, the only guy that would make a team consider using a first round pick on him. And the thought of putting that dude with Justin Herbert is obviously great. We've seen Tom Telesco take 1 first round running back. It was Melvin Gordon. So not a great track record there. Really, in general, is there a good running back that Tom Telesco has drafted?
Nope.
I don't know.
I don't know yet. Josh Kelly definitely improved.
Sure,
I'll give him some flowers. He got better,
a lot better.
I need to see more.
I think it's about a diversified room too. Bijan Robinson kind of reminds me of LT, just the balance, being able to just stay up, make people miss, but LT doesn't go top 10 if he's drafted in 2022 or 2023, right? It's just a different game now. It'd be tempting. I'd probably lean against going over a running back, but if you say you have a game-changing running back, someone that can kind of single-handedly improve your running game, I can
4
maybe buy
running
into
backs
it.
in 4 years, though, Daniel? Are we really
Exactly.
doing it?
I mean, but the thing is for 3 running backs in 3 years, and you still don't really feel like you have the answers right there, and the running game still isn't good enough. But we do have more to get into, including some of the key free agents the Chargers will have to keep around in this upcoming free agency period. And we're also going to get into 2 players who fans love that might be getting the chop because of cap reasons and just not being able to bring back anyone, or not everyone at least, especially some of the Chargers' most productive players in 2022. And we're going to get into that. But first, I have to tell you guys that today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. I'm really geeked for our new partner and a sponsor of today's episode, the mobile football game Ultimate Football GM. Right now is probably the best time to play Ultimate Football GM because it's the off season. So if you want to find a way to build up your franchise, to build a franchise that can go win a Super Bowl, unlike the Chargers were able to do in 2022, you can go with the Ultimate Football GM, where you can hire the right coaches and coordinators, trade players, make draft picks, and navigate your franchise through free agency, the draft, and all the ups and downs of a season. Some of the things that happen are stranger than fiction on the Ultimate Football GM. You will have to definitely navigate some landscapes where you're going to have to try to pull through in some difficult situations. It's very, very realistic. And Locked On Chargers listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On, all caps, in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps. So make sure to check it out today. To download the app, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. Let's get back to this fan mail show, David, and we have some more in our Chargers mailbag that we want to get into. I want to talk a little bit about some of the Chargers impending free agents, because as we stand right now, the Chargers are $19 million over the cap in 2023. So thinking that they're going to be able to bring back all their best players is not going to happen. I mean, it wasn't going to happen last year when the Chargers had a ton of cap space and they had guys like Kazir White and Uchenna Nwosu and Justin Jones that were all headed to free agency. And it's going to happen again this year because the Chargers are way more strapped than they were. And I'm sure there's a plan, and we'll talk about that in the cap, ramifications of it all. They're going to have to make some really, really tough decisions because, unfortunately for them, a lot of the players that they had, really have career years were headed towards free agency. Guys like Drue Tranquil, Trey Pipkins, Morgan Fox. And that's why McKinley Pierce is asking us today, if you could only re-sign one of these 3 free agents, who would it be? Trey Pipkins, Drue Tranquil, or Morgan Fox? What do you think?
Man, this is why I am not a GM in the NFL, because this is
why.
a horrible question to have to answer. Because, hey, I've rooted for all of these guys. I've watched them all. I want them all to do well, and they have all had really good seasons for the Chargers. But if we're looking at
if you
this,
could, you would bring them all back, of course.
I would, absolutely. I would
Yeah.
love to sign them all because I feel like they all would make the team better. But unfortunately, you can't do that. So in the context and the confines of this question here, it's what position is the most valuable? And to me, that is the tackle position. And so that would mean that I would have to bring back Trey Pipkins. And Trey Pipkins had a great year. I mean, even battling through an MCL injury that was plaguing him most of the year, he gave up only 2 sacks and 8 hits and 586 pass blocking snaps. That's according to PFF. That, folks, is damn good. Okay.
Yeah.
That is very, very good tackle play, especially considering where he came from to where
Sure.
he is now. It is night and day, a completely different player. He has earned himself another contract. The Chargers should reward him with such.
Yeah, and that's borderline elite, right tackle play. Probably not the level of the Lane Johnsons and Ryan Ramchicks of some of those guys, but like the next step down, you will absolutely take, because the Chargers spent so long trying to look for a right tackle. You have one in the building right now. That is the one of these 3 guys you have to get the deal done with. And I think the other thing about this is you can still kind of buy low on him, right? Because of him being in and out of the lineup, because of some struggles he had trying to play through the MCL sprain that he had. Maybe he's not a guy that, 16 teams are trying to knock down the door on, because a lot of teams need right tackles. You have to hope. I think out of these guys, he's the guy that could potentially be flying under the radar a little bit. The Chargers definitely might be able to get in and get him below market value. I think out of these 3 guys, the guy who is most likely to outplay his contract is Trey Pipkins. What right tackles are making, I don't think he's going to get that on the open market. I think Drue Tranquil, if he signs, 2 years, $7 million a season or something like that, right? Or Morgan Fox had 6.5 sacks from defensive tackle last year.
It's a great
somebody's
year.
going to be willing to pay that, dude. And I just don't think the
Absolutely.
Chargers are going to be able to. And I think it'll be a huge loss if they can't.
Yeah, it's going to suck.
But I do think that with Trey Pipkins, though, you might be able to get him cheaper while, maybe he doesn't know his worth or other teams don't know his worth. And if he can play at the level he even played at last season, and you can get him for half of the price of what the top right tackles in the league are making right now, I think he has a really good chance of outplaying. And I think for that reason, that's who you have to go with. Plus, I just don't think the Chargers offensive line can lose anyone. Like, I don't think you can go backwards, and you don't have the money to go buy new guys, and you don't have the draft capital to kind of surely be able to find the right guy to go in, right, with who you have right now, or to know that guy's going to be able to step in. You know what Zion Johnson brought this year. It's hard to just bring in rookies and assume that they're going to start for you right away. It never quite works out that way. But that brings us to our next question from Sherrod on Twitter, who said, tough offseason decisions. Who are two loved players who may not return, and two players that may get re-signed? So I'm going to go right back to that last one, David. I mean, Drue Tranquil and Morgan Fox are the two I'm most afraid that the Chargers could lose during this offseason and really can't afford to. They don't really have a pass rushing defensive tackle at all besides Morgan Fox. And Drue Tranquil is easily the best linebacker on the team. And I just think that those are two guys, fan favorites, that realistically the Chargers might not be able to bring back.
No, I agree. I agree with you 100%. I had Tranquil on my list as well. It just seems like if you take him out of the equation and you got Kenneth Murray there, who else are you bringing in? Is it Nick Neiman? I mean, that's really the only other option.
No heir apparent, sure.
Right. The drop off there is considerable. My other guy here is Kyle Van Noy. I think Kyle Van Noy, towards the end of the year, really turned into a really good football player for the Chargers and really made an impact. Seemed like he was really starting to understand everything.
5 sacks in 5 games.
Yeah. He really, really turned it on when the Chargers really, really needed it. So I think that's definitely the two guys that, unfortunately, I think the Chargers are not going to be able to bring back. But as far as the guys, I think it's probably going to be Easton Stick that they're going to bring back. I don't think Chase Daniel is going to have another year with the Chargers. And Will Clapp is going to be the other guy that is just kind of but I mean, he's a guy that you can bring in. He's going to at least play kind of suitable for just a small period of time. I think those two guys just didn't do a whole lot for me, but it just seemed like those are Chargers type of moves. I think they would bring both those guys back.
Yeah, Will Clapp played admirably when he had to fill in for Corey Linsley. I think that's a sign that should get done, but it's definitely not something that's going to get you excited either.
Right.
I had, instead of, Easton Stick, which, God, and I hope that doesn't happen, I had DeAndre Carter, because I not that he's like all the way, but like I think he's as a receiver, right? And I think you saw him when he had to try to take more on his plate. He did much more than I think anyone could have expected before the season.
Can they find somebody else that could replace that production from the wide receiver standpoint and then get somebody else to return kicks? That's my question, though.
It's the punt returns. Yeah. I mean, it just like you don't have an answer necessarily as a punt returner. You should just be able to find one. It shouldn't be that hard. That's what he was brought in originally for. So you have to hope, if he does come back, it's more just of that role and not somebody that you're having to rely on in big time moments and giving jet sweeps to on 3rd and 1s, or when it's not him, Michael Bandy. Like, it's just he didn't fit in that way. He's not a guy
way more than he ever should have on offense. Let's be honest.
And he played well for a wide receiver who's 5'9", like trying to make it in the NFL. He played very well, but I definitely think he could be one of the guys that comes back as a punt returner potentially, but I don't think it's anywhere near a guarantee by any means. But I think roster construction has a lot to do with it, right? Like having to keep that wide receiver on the roster for special teams purposes, but maybe he's not the next guy that should be going in when you need to run your offense, right? And you lose someone like Mike Williams or something like that, and he's the next man up. Not great roster construction wise. So we're going to talk about how the Chargers can improve their roster construction. And we're also going to talk about if Justin Herbert has the eye of the tiger, has that it factor like some of the other top quarterbacks in the NFL, and also get into if we trust Brandon Staley's defense with all the talk about the offense. Maybe not enough people are talking about if we trust the defense going into 2023. But I do need to tell you guys that today's episode is brought to you by our new favorite sponsor. And of course, I'm talking about FanDuel. I'm super excited about this partnership. Is somewhere I've used in the past already. So it's really good that I get to just talk about them openly now, because it is something that I think if you're looking for a place to place your bets, FanDuel is the best place. And the NFL playoffs are here now. And we're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On. It's very great. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers with FanDuel, join today and you get a $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You place a $5 bet, you get $150 in free bets. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all your favorite bets from money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. That is a game changer. Being able to pick multiple props in the same game and have to be able to parlay that and get giant winnings. That's one thing you get at FanDuel you're not getting a lot of other places, on an app that's safe and super easy and secure to use. Right now, football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We have some more Chargers mailbag questions we want to get into here, including talking about Justin Herbert. But I first want to talk about Tom Telesco in the roster construction for the Chargers, because it is something that I've been critical of. And I think when you hear this question, you will realize other people have too. So this is from Normac on YouTube, who asked, how do you guys think that this team can improve its roster construction? I think having 6 wide receivers on the active roster is a must if the team continues to throw the ball, if not for injury, to keep everyone running routes fresh. Also, I like the idea of drafting a late round quarterback or an undrafted free agent to back up Justin Herbert. Don't think he needs a wise vet to back him up anymore in his 4th year. So that's an interesting question, David. I agree with the undrafted free agent. You know, if you want to take a late quarterback, I definitely get that. I don't think you need to pay for a premium backup. We know that Chase Daniel, what he brings to the table. He did lead a touchdown drive this year, so keep Chase Daniel's good name out of your mouth. But if you're looking for places where you kind of have to clean up, like, who's Patrick Mahomes' backup? I mean, well, now I guess that's a terrible thing because we just saw Chad Henne and he led a 98-yard touchdown drive. But you don't know most big quarterbacks
Yeah,
backers.
handed it
That's
off
my
like
point is
12 times, though. I mean, he didn't really do much.
no. But the thing is, though, is when you don't necessarily need a mentor to Justin Herbert. You can go
No, I
cheaper on
agree.
that as long as you have someone
Yeah.
that's serviceable, who's going to, not lose you the game if they have to come in for a short stretch. If you lose Justin Herbert for 6 games, your season's going to tank anyways, pretty much no matter who your backup is. So
Right.
you just can't really sustain that for the most part in the NFL, or at least it's very, very hard to do. But David, I think that there is a better way to build this roster, especially from a position group standpoint, and just how they decide to build some of these rooms, and even just how they're building like the defense physicality wise and being able to find guys who can tackle. Like, I think there's ways that they can improve in that.
I agree completely. Yeah, 3 quarterbacks. Can we stop that like yesterday? I'm tired of that. That is horrible roster construction. You do not need that. I mean, I understand it. Maybe having guys to support Justin in the first couple of years. Let's take the training wheels off. I don't think that's necessary any longer. 1 backup quarterback. That's it. 4 running backs. Also, another thing that needs to go. Let's stop doing that. Let's get 3 solid guys. Keep it at that. Maybe a swing tackle that you can actually trust, that, if somebody gets hurt, that he's going to come in and at least play adequately. I think, you're very fortunate that what Jamari Sawyer brings to the table now from, that perspective, having that versatility to kind of play.
But it didn't make a lot of
positions.
sense this year roster construction wise to go in with Storm Norton as your swing tackle, right?
No, I did not. And then I agree with you on the defensive side, having guys that are a little bit more rugged, maybe, that are just better tacklers, guys that are going to be able to get guys on the ground, because this defense, the way the way Brandon Staley has really constructed it, it requires these guys to really be quality tacklers, because there's a lot of those one-on-one opportunities where you got to get a ball carrier on the ground. And there's too many times this season and the seasons past where they have not been able to get that done.
I agree with all that. I think just having a more diverse skill set in some of their position groups is really is one of the biggest roster, problems that the Chargers have. When you look at it, I mean, look at the tight ends and receivers, right? You have basically 2 tight ends who are really only receiving tight ends in Gerald Everett, Donald Parham. Donald Parham's come a long way in that regard, right? But then you have Trey McKitty, who's supposed to be just a blocking tight end and can't block, right? Like, and that's a problem. Like, you need more well-rounded guys, or at least, hey, get someone is good at blocking. Get someone, if you're going to have just more receiving options or just lesser blocking tight ends, find other guys who can do that job that you can put in there in certain situations, right? And they don't really have that. Look at the wide receiver group. You had one speed receiver going into the season, Jalen Guyton, and even he is not like the top ends of NFL speed or what NFL teams consider speed. The fact that you went into the season with only that dude as a field stretcher, I think is pretty bad roster construction to have
Yeah.
every other wide receiver that you have after that running at 4 or 5 plus, as much as, we've heard them talk about how they don't really
A lot of times there
care
was
about
just 4
speed.
wide receivers too. I mean, a lot of games where it's like if one other person gets hurt, they are really going to be, in a
Totally.
bad situation. So I
Yeah.
agree. You got to have more guys that can go out there and get the job done.
Well, I think even like the running backs, right? Like you have Austin Eckler, who's dynamic, right?
Yeah,
But I think
for sure.
behind that, I know Josh Kelly has improved, but like you don't have any true explosive running backs from an athletic standpoint, right? As far as
Yeah.
guys who are home run threats.
Right.
And you also don't really have any guys who are physically imposing bruisers. Like there's not, you don't have those identities. You don't have the diverse skill sets in that, core of running backs.
Right.
And that's one thing where I think you just roster construction wise, they could do a lot better at. But we do have a couple of voicemails I want to get into, including if Justin Herbert has enough swagger to get the Chargers over the top.
Guys, this is Ben from Arkansas. I love the show. I've been listening to you this whole year. It's been great. My question for you guys is, do you guys think that Justin Herbert has that eye of the tiger or the swagger that a lot of the other elite quarterbacks in the league do? Just for example, you look at Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes or even Josh Allen, that they kind of have this eye of the tiger mentality that you see kick in late games. And sometimes it seems like Justin Herbert doesn't really have that. He seems timid. What do you guys think? Thanks again. Love the show. Go Bolts.
Well, David, I saw you making faces over there when everyone else couldn't see you. What do you think about that?
I really don't subscribe to that at all. And I think you have to look at what he has done late in games. 10 fourth quarter comebacks, 13 game-winning drives. In 3 in year 1, 5 in year 2, and 5 in year 3 as far as the game-winning drives. He definitely has that ice water in his veins. He has that eye of the tiger. He's not as demonstrative with his emotions on the field, right? We saw the kind of first down symbol that he gave against Miami. And that's kind of been the tall and the short of it, right? He just doesn't do that a lot. He doesn't show that type of personality a lot. But does he have that ice water in his veins? Does he have that stillness? Does he keep that low heart rate in those big moments? I think he definitely does. And that's why he's been so successful winning games for the Chargers. And when his best is required, a lot of the times he's been able to produce that and get a win for the Bolts.
And it's easy to forget that that's one of the reasons he was doubted in the draft to begin with, right? Because people weren't sure if he really had that. And really what this is asking is if he has the it factor, which is I always think is dumb. It's cool when your quarterback has swagger. It's cool when you can be Joe Shiesty and Joe Burr.
Right.
Like
Joe
that's
Cool,
cool. Yeah, for sure. Joe Cool. Like that is all really cool. I think most people wish their quarterback would be that. And like Philip Rivers was super demonstrative, right? Philip Rivers
Definitely.
wore his emotions on his sleeve. The Chargers could not have gone from two more completely opposite, quarterbacks personality wise than Philip Rivers to Justin Herbert. It doesn't happen like that.
Love to
often.
get a Justin Herbert mic'd up, but I don't know if we're going to get that anytime
They probably
soon.
tried it and he just didn't say anything. I remember they did it for one of the training camps, and like the biggest part of it was like his pads clicking when he threw the ball because
Yeah,
it
that
was
was
just
about
him
it.
throwing and throwing and throwing and no words being spoken. Don't also forget the guys who had the it factor that didn't work out, and there's plenty of
Right.
them, right? I mean, you talk about Baker Mayfield has that chip on his shoulder, right? Has
Johnny
that underdog.
Manziel.
Johnny Manziel, another guy I have on my list.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work out. That alone isn't enough. I do think it is, important not to forget the big moments that Justin Herbert has showed up in a big way, including this season, the throw for the Titans against the Titans for the win.
Yep.
Falcons' big throw to set up the game-winning field goal after the fumble that got fumbled. 2-point conversion drive versus the Cardinals.
Yep.
Balled out in the game against Tua, where everything was heightened times 10 going up against his draft classmate. And how is he going to perform against a guy who had been better than him in his draft class that this season at least? And he showed up in all this. He showed up in prime time. He showed up in the week 18 against the Raiders with the season on the line and playoffs on the line, and showed up in big way, converted fourth down after fourth down. Did he show up in this last game against the Jaguars late? No, nobody did. There was a full team collapse, but it can't really just be on his shoulders. I don't think that him not having the eye of the tiger or that swagger is necessarily, stopping him from being great by any means. Let's squeeze this last voicemail in here before we get off, David. This is if we can trust Brandon Staley's defense with everyone talking about the offense.
This is Kirk in Eagle, Nebraska. Hey, I just have a question. I know everybody's all hyped about the offensive coordinator and all that, but my question is, do you trust this defense? I have been thinking about it, and I just don't understand how the defense can be so good and so bad at times. Even in that last game against Jacksonville, they were great in the first half, bad in the second half. Just doesn't make any sense that defense can look so good or so bad at times, kind of fluctuate so much. Anyhow, that's my question. Thanks. Have a great day.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair question with Brandon Staley, David. I think a lot of it has to do with how much you're buying into that 4-game winning streak for the Chargers down the stretch, and if that is indicative of things to come, or if it's really more what you saw the last 2 games, which was inconsistency, getting beat up by a bad Broncos offense, and then obviously blowing a huge lead against the Jaguars.
I mean, I think I like the concept of not giving up the explosive plays, but the problem is in practice that didn't work out. The Chargers defense gave up a ton of explosive plays on the ground,
And in
40
practice,
plus
you
yard
mean by
runs.
like in the games when
Right.
when you
Yes.
actually had to try to stop the explosive
Right.
plays. Yeah.
You're looking at the concept of the defense on paper and then the application of it on the football
In
field.
theory, yeah.
Those two things did not match up. So
Sure.
I like the concept. I just didn't like how it was applied on the football field for the Chargers. Too many explosive plays in the passing game, too many in the running game. The run defense was horrendous, and I just don't like that. Oh, I'm just going to be okay with them running the ball as much as they possibly can and really shoving it down your throat, because I think that also calls to an attitude type of situation there too, which we always just kind of spoke about the Chargers as not being more of a physical team. They've been more of a finesse team, and I think that also showed itself this season. I would want the defense to be a little bit more physical, a little bit more violent, and I haven't really seen that in many years for the Chargers defense. So for those reasons, I don't really trust the Chargers defense. No.
I don't think you can fully trust them. I like to think that 4-game winning streak is indicative of what you could see over a larger sample size. At the same time, it's hard for me to imagine personnel-wise the Chargers being a lot better unless they're getting major contributions from their draft picks in 2023 defensively. They have so many big contracts on that side of the football anyways, with Khalil Mack, Derwin James, Joey Bosa, and JC Jackson. That's a lot of big contracts on one side of the ball. That's not something that's easy to do, to add to that. Plus, you have all the other guys we talked about, like the Kyle Van Noys and Morgan Foxes and Bryce Callahans. Those guys are not going to be easy to replace, David. Can you continue to find those 1-year deals? And the other thing is, we've seen good game plans, Kansas City, Miami, San Francisco, the Raiders, but we haven't seen the adjustments. And I think that's where the other fear comes from.
Yeah. It definitely is part of it. That the adjustment part of it, especially in the second half of the Jaguars game, I think that's the biggest example of the entire season. Is you see the Chargers just dominate in the first half and really feel like they have an answer for every single thing that the Jaguars offense was trying to throw at them. They dominated them. They completely confused Trevor Lawrence, had his mind spinning. But in the second half, the team that made the adjustment is the team that won, and that was the Jaguars. And the Chargers defense gave up 24 points in that second half. They could not get one stop. They get one stop, and they change the trajectory of how that game ends. But that's unfortunately another reason why you can't have a lot of confidence in what you've seen out of the Chargers defense.
Well, we just haven't seen it in 2 seasons be a good defense for a whole season, right? Or even really half of a season. It's been a super inconsistent unit, and injuries have played a huge factor in that. And the offense hasn't helped either, right? The offense didn't help them against the Jaguars when they needed them to. Didn't capitalize on the turnovers they got early in the game, right? Or at least fully capitalize them and score touchdowns off of them. The defense got hurt by the offense many times this year. That obviously didn't help as well. I just don't know how you can fully trust it. Like, you've seen him be able to game plan. Some of the game plans he rolled out this year, I thought were night and day better than what we saw. Even that second game against the Raiders, they were shutting the Raiders out early on. They started off really hot, and then guys stopped executing. And I think part of it too is you have a problem with physicality. You have a problem with perimeter defense and corners and safeties coming up to make tackles. And this is a very, gap specific defense. You have to have guys going to where they're supposed to be. And if they don't, you break explosive plays. If you have guys that are out there on the edge because you have injuries getting ragged all around, You can have the perfect scheme and the perfect play setup. If you're just getting manhandled on the edge, it's not going to work, and people are going to be able to get explosive plays. The pass rush wasn't good enough, which is another thing that has to be a lot better to get good defensive results for any team. So there's a lot of it that goes into it. You can have good game plans and bad executions, and there was just certain games where Brandon Staley got outcoached. Other teams found out what Staley was trying to do, and he couldn't find the right punch back to get the Chargers, the stops they needed down the stretch. So it's interesting. I don't think you can fully trust it at this point, but the offensive coordinator is the biggest position out there right now, and the biggest one the Chargers have to fill this offseason to try to get multiple things going, including their running game and their passing game around Justin Herbert. But the Chargers have a couple of new candidates who have put their hats in the ring, and we're going to be talking about those guys tomorrow. Joe Brady, someone that a lot of people have been talking about, a very hot name in the coaching cycle, and also Thomas Jones from the Rams, another assistant. So make sure you guys are back here tomorrow with us to break down a couple new offensive coordinator candidates for the Chargers. But to make sure you don't miss it, make sure you are subscribing to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and following the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from. Thank you to everyone who hit us up at Locked On LAC on Twitter to get your questions in today, or called into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924. We appreciate all of you guys, and we're sorry to anyone whose question we didn't get onto today's show. Just had a ton of questions, and we appreciate everyone who hit us up. And to make sure you don't miss the show, you can also find it on David Drogemeyer's Twitter at DroTalkSD, or on my Twitter at DanTalkSports. You can also find us at Locked On Chargers on Instagram and on our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. A lot to get into, David. A lot more offseason questions that have to be answered. We'll be back tomorrow talking about more offensive coordinator candidates. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.